First up, obviously, is the issue that's probably foremost in your minds, which is the destruction of our national fabric by these shutdowns that are taking place in response to the coronavirus. States across the nation have destroyed their economies, suppressed their people's freedoms. For what? I'm not quite sure, in the sense of I'm not sure about the science behind it. I'm not sure about the logic behind it. And I'm not sure about the constitutional basis behind it. Generally speaking, states have police powers, right? Well, they're only limited. They're not unlimited. They can't keep you from working forever. They can't keep you in your homes forever. They can't keep you from exercising your constitutional prerogatives forever. And certainly if there's a quarantine needed, or there's an emergency of a natural disaster, or, as I said, a quarantine, but that's a limited police power. If you individually are subject potentially to either being sick or sharing an illness that could be devastating, there's precedent for a limited police power to keep you quarantined. But the idea that there'd be this kind of broad-based shutdown across the state that's indiscriminate in nature, that's something that's important, and that's lengthy and indeterminate and an indeterminate time. That's not proper. And I appreciate the president has been pushing for reopening America, and he's right to do so. I'd suggest that he ditch the models, ditch the science that seems to be being made up as they go along, and just tell governors to stop the suppression. We've got to be prepared to deal with the coronavirus issues as they arise. But the presumption has got to be, the starting point has got to be, is that, okay, the state functions. Meaning, I don't mean the state in the government sense of the word. I mean the state, people in a state should be able to function, live their lives, exercise their rights, go to school. And there's a particular health concern, then you deal with it in a limited fashion that's narrowly constructed in terms of the length of time and the suppression of someone's freedom. I mean, it's frustrating that that's got to be reiterated, but it's true. I don't know if you saw Tucker Carlson interview the New Jersey governor, I think it's Governor Murphy, on TV this week. But I encourage you to go back and find that online or read the interview. It's pretty clear he had no idea. He seems to have his heart in the right place, but he's oblivious. He had no idea why why the shutdown was necessary. It's pretty clear he couldn't come up with good rational reasons. And on top of that, the Tucker asked him about, what about the Bill of Rights? And he said, well, that's above my pay grade. I wasn't thinking of the Bill of Rights. Well, you know what? They're supposed to be thinking of the Bill of Rights. And this is why people are protesting in states. You've got this draconian shutdown in Michigan that's restricting people's movement between homes, private residences. I mean, just think about, and what's frustrating is I don't think these public health experts are bad people. I just think we're giving, first of all, they think they know more than they do about the way the country should operate. I mean, I don't pretend to have the knowledge to run an entire city. I mean, those of you who have families, it's a challenge to run a household. Those of you who have businesses, it's a challenge to run a business. But we've got public health officials who think they can run a country, and no one voted for them. And when you ask them about the science, it's pretty clear there's no science behind it. This is a radical experiment on the American people, folks. Never before in our world history, or our nation's history to be more direct. I mean, the idea that you would shut down a nation of 330 million people to control a pandemic, just describe it like that kind of highlights its absurdity. And indeed, the science, the data is showing that the shutdowns don't have much to do with controlling the virus. The virus is going to do what the virus does. Oh yes, we're told we're supposed to flatten the curve. Well, the curve, the number they were concerned about, that curve has nothing to do with reality. And of course, the goalposts are not only moving, I mean, in retrospect, the goalposts were phantoms. And now we've moved to, quote, testing. We need a widespread testing. You know what? I'm done with it. I appreciate there may be some reasons to test, but I'm done with it because I'd try, honestly, to follow the logic and to follow the science and to listen to what the experts are saying. And frankly, they don't seem to know what they're doing. And they're guessing, which is fine. They're being asked to provide their best input, but it is, in many ways, an educated guess. So now the curve, that we need that 100,000 people would be dead with mitigation. Well, now those numbers are dramatically lower. So much for that. And the curve was never as steep as projected. In fact, it was flattening even as they were talking about shutting the country down. Again, showing the shutdowns didn't have much to do with it. But now we're being told testing. And the president's the new recommendation to the president was in terms of shutdowns, ending them at least, which is a major development. We're light years better than we were even 2 days ago. Because now the president, pretty clear, he's all in terms of trying to get the country open. But you should recognize that, again, the media hates him, so there's that problem with the media actually encouraging damaging public policy simply because they hate Trump. And the governors are fearful. In some places, the governors don't know what they're doing. In other places, they're just fearful. In others, they think they've got this power that the Lord doesn't give them, which is to run the lives of every man and woman and child in their state. And this isn't a states' rights issue. There's nothing in our constitutional system or a Republican form of government generally that gives governors the right to keep you suppressed at home, suppress your First Amendment rights, suppress your right to property based on the flimsy science, irrational thinking, changing argument. These shutdowns are indiscriminate and they're lengthy. Therefore, they're unlawful. If you're Typhoid Mary or the equivalent thereof, maybe there's the police power the state has to keep you quarantined for a period of time. But the idea that police power extends to every person in the nation, every person in the state specifically, irrespective of their health status, irrespective of their family situation, irrespective of the risk, you should be pushing. The president didn't shut down the country. The governor shut down the country. These are 40 different states that have shutdown orders effectively. Some are beginning to try to lift them as we speak, which is great. But our freedoms are at stake. We have 22 million people unemployed right now. That has health consequences. As the president has said, and I've often observed, you can't have health care without an economy. People will die because of the shutdown as surely as night follows day. Our healthcare system is being decimated. Our retail sector is being decimated. It's been cut 50% in some sectors. The travel sector, airplane travel, is the equivalent of 1954 levels. How that is so deeply disturbing, isn't it? Our food chains are under stress because of the shutdowns in our because major meat processors and others are beginning to shut down because they're following guidelines. I don't want you to get sick. I don't want to get sick. I don't want my family to get sick. I don't want your family to get sick. I don't want anyone to die necessarily. I don't want anyone to die of anything before, quote, their time. But you can't save lives by destroying a country. You just can't. In fact, it's the very opposite. In order to save lives, you need a strong country. You need an economy. The best way to protect someone's health is to give them a job, keep them employed, give them their lives back. Now, Judicial Watch has several Freedom of Information Act requests about the issues that we're talking about here. We're obviously monitoring the grave constitutional threats to our freedom. As a result of these shutdowns, we may take legal action. I don't know. You know, and as I was pointing out earlier, the media, when all's said and done, the media is going to be responsible. And I mean media loosely in the sense of the liberal hate Trump media. I mean their suppression of hydroxychloroquine, their poo-pooing of these other emerging treatments, like this antiviral. I think it's, I don't want to mispronounce it, but it's by Gilead. All those are reasons to reopen the country because you not only have reasonable steps to stop the spread, which I trust Americans to figure out how to do on their own without the nanny state telling them that they only can go back to work in phases versus just turning a switch on. I mean, I'm sorry, when Dr. Fauci says it's not like turning a switch on, well, what is it like? What I want the government to do is to get out of the way of the economy and stop suppressing the people. And it's not for unelected experts or politicians who think they can run the world to calibrate who can go to work and who can't. I mean, for instance, the White House's plan, which I say, gives governors, frankly, wide latitude to open up the country. But of course, there's lots in the plan that give governors who don't want to do anything plenty of reason not to open it up. So first of all, the plan, quote, has gating, meaning you can't get into reopening your state unless you have this specific curve that's going down, 14 days of declining cases. Why? And we've been shut down for 6 weeks. So that by that standard, as soon as you open up, cases will pop up. It's going to necessarily almost happen. Well, unless, of course, the whole shutdown charade is just that, a charade, in the sense the virus isn't following or being mitigated by the shutdown. So assuming that arbitrary and capricious standard is met, you go into phase 1. And if your schools are closed, you keep them closed, but you can begin to send people back to work. Well, that has nothing related to the real world. Because a lot of people can't go back to work unless their kids are in school. It just can't happen. So it seems to me the presumption needs to be open the country back up everywhere. And let local officials treat outbreaks as they pop up with the help of state and federal officials. Now, the president rightly pointed out, and the White House rightly pointed out, there's no reason an entire state has to be, like in New York. I mean, New York City is a nightmare, or was. But I'm sure the rest of the state isn't as bad off. The rest of the state can get back open. And I'm sure the same is in other places where urban areas may be more adversely affected, or maybe even suburban or rural areas. There may be outbreaks, but it doesn't necessarily mean the rest of the state has to be shut down. Of course, that's common sense, isn't it? But we've got to revert to common sense to protect our economy, save lives, and protect our freedoms. So you got the media suppressing news about treatments and making governors more fearful because those options, my guess, are not being approved or they're not being pursued as aggressively as they otherwise would be because of the media attacks on them. And you got the media more obsessed with protecting China now than worrying about the 22 million Americans who are who can't work because of this crazy shutdown. The news is that the administration is pursuing evidence, which has been out there for months but has been suppressed largely by the anti-Trump media, that the virus came out of a facility in China. I don't know if it was on purpose or not. They are thinking it was an accidental release. Changes a lot, though, in terms of why they explains a lot as to why the Chinese behaved the way they did. There's an old book. The title is, I forget the author. I think it's Fred Schwartz, who's kind of an old anti-communist from the 50s and 60s. He's passed away now, but I think his book was called "You Can Trust the Communists to Be Communists." So, the Chinese behaved like communists when caught screwing up. They disappeared people, they lied, and placed, in this case, the whole world at risk as a result. And of course, it highlights the need for strong borders and control of those borders. So you've got this China connection, which needs to be pursued. And but on the other hand, the irony is that we have oppression that the Chinese communists would be quite comfortable with here in the United States. So I put out a tweet earlier. I said, I'm not going to snitch on you for refusing to wear a mask in public, for going to the park with your child, for going to church, or even for trying to work to feed your family, or going for a drive just because. Because I'm not seeing any of the logic behind any of this shutdown activity. Wash your hands. Take basic steps for hygiene. Maybe wear a mask if you want, if you're comfortable doing that. But none of this requires us to destroy our government and destroy our way of life. I mean, people focus on the economy. The left hates the word economy because they pretend all we care about is money. No, we care about people's lives. We won't be able to eat without an economy. We can't have health care without an economy. We can't have freedom without an economy. And the indiscriminate, lengthy nature of these shutdowns show that they're constitutionally inappropriate, to put it mildly. Someone's got to be thinking of the Bill of Rights. The president's been tweeting out, liberate state Virginia or liberate Minnesota, or wherever he's been tweeting. You know what he needs to do? He needs to liberate America. He can't trust the governors to do this. He needs to say, you know what? First order of business is opening up the economy, and then that's the best way to be able to save people's lives. A vigorous, strong economy where people are able to go to work. And yeah, we got an emergency, so I'm going to deploy hydroxychloroquine. For anyone who wants to take it as a preventative, have at it. We're going to make it widely available as a treatment so that there are no more hurdles and hoops that people have to jump through in order to get it. So there's a lot to be concerned about, and the left is obviously using the coronavirus as a pretext to change our election system, eliminate voter ID, have nationalized ballot harvesting, which would lead to chaos. You might as well not have an election if the left gets its way. It's that bad. And the best way to preserve our republic is to get the country back to work again, because the left will have less excuse to upend the sorts of things that protect us from having elections stolen, for instance. I know there's a big fight about spending, adding additional money to the Paycheck Protection Program. And all of that aside, the best way to preserve someone's paycheck, obviously, is to get them employed. The best way to preserve someone's health is to get them employed and give them their lives back. So Judicial Watch, of course, is going to continue to investigate the coronavirus as appropriate. So we've got some, I think we even will have some litigation coming up soon on it, at least FOIA litigation. We're observing and monitoring the legal implications of the various shutdowns. There's already been a major court ruling in Mississippi, where I think it was Mississippi, where a federal district court judge told, no, it was in Kentucky. The mayor of Louisville, Kentucky, was trying to suppress a church service that would occur where people were sitting in their cars, socially distant, and the judge says you can't do that. I mean, you can go to a grocery store, you can't go to church. You can go to a grocery store, you can't go to work. You can go to a grocery store, you can't go to school. And what I'm highlighting there is all that's essential. All that's essential, and there's no rhyme or reason or logic behind shutting this all down. They're just making it up as they go along. It doesn't mean the medical experts are lying. They're giving us their best advice, but they don't know how to run a country any more than you do. And that's why we have freedom.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch all the latest news from Judicial Watch.